Sorry. Good afternoon again. Welcome to this meeting of full council. I am Councillor Paul Baker, Mayor of Cheltenham and Chair of today's meeting. The meeting is being live streamed to the council's YouTube channel. Welcome to any members of the public who are watching the meeting remotely. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years. If you are present and making a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to this and to the use of the recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. If there are members of the public, if members of the public are present in the public gallery, I think you're both asking questions, aren't you? Would you not want to come down and sit in the chamber? I don't know. Oh, my apologies. As there are members sitting in the public gallery, welcome to everyone in the public gallery and to those asking questions. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation, and the footage and recordings will be held by the council for 5 months. Please also note that a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should make your way to the nearest fire exit immediately. Okay, thank you. So, without further ado, we move on to apologies. We have apologies from Councillors Beale, Doby, Foster, Wheeler, Willingham and Bamford. Are there any more? Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mayor. For particular reasons, I need to leave about 4 o'clock. So my apologies. What I would say is that having read through the documentation, even though I won't be here to vote on it, I do support what is being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. We might well be over by then, you never know. Right, so we then move on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Anybody wish to declare any interests? No? Lovely, thank you. We then move on to item 3, which is minutes of the last meeting held on the 16th of December 2024. Anybody got any questions or observations, or are we happy to accept those as a true record? In that case, we just go to the vote on that then, please. Okay, that's carried. That's carried. Thank you all very much. Okay, we now move on to item 4, which is communications by the Mayor. I would like to refer to one or two events that I've been able to attend of late. Trying to keep it short, bearing in mind the length of the meeting. It was a delight actually to be invited to go and watch Cheltenham Town Women FC. They were playing Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Women's FA Cup, having already beaten Norwich City in the previous round. And whilst they lost, unfortunately, Cheltenham Town's women football is going from strength to strength. They have age groups all the way through. And I would particularly like to mention Andy Little, who is the chairman and has been there a long, long time, and he's done so much work. And it's like so much in our town, it's all down to people who volunteer and give up their time. And on a similar note to that, I was invited by Cheltenham Rugby Club to a celebration of their sponsors and things, where they had 2 matches. They had the ladies' rugby match and then followed by the men's rugby match. And again, there's a guy there called Steve Ratcliffe, who's been chairman of that club for ever and a day and puts his heart and soul into it. It was a great day. Ladies rugby, women's rugby at Cheltenham is going very, very well indeed, as Mike will know, and they're top of their league. And so it was a great celebration. I love inviting groups to the parlour because, as we know, I'm sure you've all been there, it's a lovely, lovely room. Sadly, it will be lost in a few years' time. So that's why it's important, I think, we can get as many people coming in and see it whilst we still have it. And I was delighted to welcome volunteers from the Pitfield Swans and Friends group who do so much to look after Pitfield Park and the swans, and they're constantly heaving out loads of discarded fishing tackle. So that was brilliant. I then had the Mile Hill Women's Institute, and we had a lovely conversation about what they do and about the town. And then Dave Bath, who many of you will know, who does so much volunteering in our town, and Flo came along to that as well. And we also had a really good conversation about Petersfield and what's going on down there. And so, like you, Flo, and others here, I really hope that we can see that project through to fruition, because it's such an exciting potential. And it's great to open businesses. I went to Obsidian, which is a refresh of that business, and a fantastic showroom. You know, they're investing in the future. They're investing in Cheltenham. They're creating jobs. And on a slightly different level, but nevertheless still creating jobs. I went to open the new Longfield Hospice charity shop in Coronation Square. And these charities just do such a fantastic job. And just a couple of events just to mention, and the Holocaust Memorial Day, which was held here, was a what's the word? Very emotional occasion, and it does seem that despite that, we don't learn anything in our world today. No Child Left Behind, something that this borough is extremely proud of, and something that we do that we're not obliged to do. So the No Child Left Behind event at the town hall was magical, really well attended, fantastic speech from Councillor Atherstone, and I think they've got a really exciting year of activity to look forward to. And then finally, the retrofit show, which Cheltenham Borough took a really big part at St Philip's and St James's, about how people can make their properties more environmentally friendly, reduce their energy consumption and so on. A fabulous show, really well attended, so congratulations to everybody involved in that. Okay, so we'll now move on then to communications by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Hay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I will keep it brief today. So we're sitting here today deciding our budgets, and I was lucky enough to be invited to go to the new Men in Sheds facility, which is based in one of our commercial units. They are an amazing team of volunteers who help with isolation, they help with mental health, they give company to those that don't have that company, but they also, you've got people there who've got from all different walks of life who have different skills. And if anybody, I'm going to make an unashamed plug, I did this at Cabinet on Tuesday, to say that actually, if you need a planter, go to Men in Sheds, because it was fantastic. So, as most of you were at the pre-council briefing for all members, you can see where my life has basically been taken up since we last met in December, is with the whole local government devolution process. And that's really all I've managed to do, apart from, as I say, going to Men in Sheds, which was amazing. But thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, I went to that event too, and it was a fabulous event. And a couple of things, they take in old tools and refurbish them, and then lend them out again. And many of them go to Africa, and they collect old pallets and stuff like that, and turn them into something useful. Fabulous, fabulous organisation. Okay, so item 6, to receive petitions. I don't think we have any. So we then go on to item 7, which is public questions. So welcome to the questioners who are present. I'm hoping you'll take the answers that you've had as read, and I'll invite you to ask any supplementaries that you may do, but can you keep your supplementary as a question rather than a speech? So David, nice to see you. You survived the County Council question session on Wednesday, so it's nice to see you here. Question 1, are you happy to treat the answer as read?
Yes, and then my supplementary question is, we're on a very tight timescale for devolution in Gloucestershire, and also there's an economic imperative that we don't delay, because every time we delay, the government will be looking to put the money elsewhere. So we've got a couple of years, but I'm very concerned that we have a positive letter rather than 5 negative letters to the Secretary of State on the 27th of March, and something more positive in November about the remaining unitary in Gloucestershire. It's got to be a sizable unit to work. And from my perspective, you all know where I come from, supporting public transport use in this borough and across the county, then obviously one county fits for us because that's how the bus network works, but the transport network fits into the West of England Mirror Combined Authority, doesn't fit into the West Midlands, by people pushing that case. So all I'm asking the leader is to make sure we perhaps knock some heads together in the next month, less than a month, Chair, to get a letter to go out to the Secretary of State, and to Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, who I'm working with, to make sure that we get a positive case for Gloucestershire that continues to get the economic development into Cheltenham, the public services in Cheltenham. And we saw from Cabinet, that bus station over there is part owned by the county and part owned by the borough. Although we've got money to invest in it, which is great. But I just want assurances that we will get positive responses to government rather than negative ones, which means we'll go even further to the back of the queue. The last thing this council wants is Secretary of State to make the decision about the future of Gloucestershire and Cheltenham. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's quite opportune. We've just had an excellent presentation from our Chief Executive on the very subject, but I'll let Councillor Hay respond.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as you know, Mr Redwell, the government paper came out on the 16th, was it, or 19th of December. A lot of water has gone under the bridge in that time. What I can reassure you or assure you is that we are working with the County Council, we are working with all of the other districts, because absolutely, but my job, well, absolutely we want to have as cohesive, although I'm sure there won't necessarily be total alignment across the county. I think that's fair to say. But what I think that myself as leader and all of the other leaders in their own respective councils will be doing the right thing for their council. And let's hope that somewhere along the line we can all align behind that. And ultimately, absolutely, because Cheltenham and Gloucestershire's got a fantastic offer across the board. And we will all do our best to make sure that the government, when it comes to it, sees a very positive response from all of us, whether it's collective or individually. But I certainly will be looking to Gloucestershire or to Cheltenham's best interests and what works for us, but also working alongside. And I think we shouldn't forget the importance at this point of our MPs, because we've got different MPs across the county. So it's important that any dialogue we have also includes them, because there's strength in numbers in the voice that goes back to government.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. Then I have question 2, Tim Harman. Your question about Montpellier toilets. Do you have a supplementary, Tim?
I do, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll take the question as read and thank the Cabinet member for it. I think we're all frustrated about the issue of the Montpellier toilets. It's not a good look. I'll try to avoid lavatorial humour, but it isn't a great success of the war on we. On a practical point of view, and I know that it's an indeterminate timescale at the moment, with the National Hunt Festival coming and subsequently the Jazz Festival, would the member ensure that we get sufficient temporary facilities up there to cope with what will be the usual high level of demand, and possibly keep something in place on a temporary basis until the new facility is open? Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Tim, for your question. It's always nice to have you back at CBC. It's like you've never left. We do miss you terribly. But I also completely agree that it is really frustrating that we are where we are with Montpellier toilets, but we've made it really clear that they had better get it done. They better get it done quick. And we have already explored the alternative of having another contractor come in to finish the work, for which the current contractor will be charged in full. So I can assure you it will be fixed and finished as soon as it's practicable. And it might even end up being a budget saving. At the rate they are having to pay us for the speed and quality of work, might even save us some money, but it will certainly be done.
Thank you, Alicia. Tim, question 3, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, thank the Cabinet member and accept the answer. In addition to Bath Terrace, the Mayor did mention to me actually at the county meeting, I think also Six Ways is in a similar position. With regard to the EV points, there has been a theme, it seems to me, with projects for the council of problems with project management of late. I could quote other cases, but I just wondered whether the lessons that can be learnt from these things mean that we need to perhaps step up the attempt in this budget, in this council, to deliver projects on time with sufficient project management and contract control. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. No, it was the car park at Grange Field I was referring to. Councillor Lewis?
I thanked him for his question once again, but I will say, however, that this particular case is a national matter. The access to electricity for many projects like ours via National Grid has become a national crisis to such an extent that even Ed Miliband himself, as the minister in central government, has had to step in and pull the plug, to pardon the pun, on anybody else applying for this kind of access, purely because the National Grid cannot take the level of demand that it's currently facing. So I fully stand behind and thank the officer team working on this particular project, because they have bent over backwards, particularly the guys at One Legal, to support the contractors who will ultimately be running and delivering these electric vehicle charging points with the very frustrating ongoing discussions over the festive period. So I do thank the team who have worked on that. I think there's nothing more we could have done. They have stepped up to the plate day in, day out. And as I said in my answer, the people delivering these EV charging points will be starting to pay us rent fairly soon. So now the issue is resolved, which it is, which is fantastic news. We will be making money whether they are or not. So they should probably hurry up a bit.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Thank you, Tim. And can I just say how much we're going to miss your budget amendments today, Tim? But, okay, so we now move on to question 4 and 5. Emma Nelson's not present. So question 6, Richard Newman, would you like to ask a supplementary?
Hello. Thank you for your answer. I hope the officer in question makes the right decision, given the overwhelming public support to keep the bell ringing. But I'd move quickly on to 2.
So you're supplementary to question 7?
An answer. Do you support Victoria, Councillor Victoria Atherstone?
Sorry, I'm not quite clear. So we're talking about question 6 and your question about the bell. What was your supplementary?
Oh, I see. Yes. Would you be willing to support us in our bell campaign to keep the bell ringing? Sorry, can I go on to 2?
So are you asking a supplementary about the bell in or not? No, you want to go on to the next question? Okay. So the next question is about protection of pubs, and you'd like to ask a supplementary to that question?
Yes,
Lovely.
sorry.
Okay, Richard, far away.
Okay, so 2. To Councillor Mike Collins, thank you for your answer. Given the loss of so many pubs nationwide, I know many in Cheltenham will be hoping our councillors take a firm interest in protecting our local public houses. With this in mind, why is it that no councillor has called the Bell-in planning proposal into committee, instead leaving it for a planning officer? Do you have no interest in protecting local pubs?
Councillor Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I've got to thank Mr. Newman for his question. I'm going to have to declare an interest here because I am a fully paid up proud card carrying member of CAMRA. But unfortunately, I can't talk about a specific planning application, which I think is what you were getting at there. I mean, I do refer you to the answer that my colleague Councillor Atherstone made to the last question you asked, which I think perhaps covers some of what you've asked there. Let's be realistic. Most pubs nowadays are owned by management companies and the big breweries is actually quite unusual that they're in a minority, pubs that are owned privately by private landlords, the good old pubs, the pubs that I like to go in. I think central government needs to make some changes to legislation around pubs and make it easier for them to survive in our current economic climate. Maybe things like reducing the management charges and the rent and maybe the business rates would help. But I do have to bring you back to the fact that, of course, we have to remember that under the last Tory government, they oversaw a huge number of pub closures on their watch. So some of that responsibility still lies with them, I believe. That's all I can say on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Councillor Collins. We'll now move on to member questions. These were all submitted by Councillor Willingham, who is sadly not well enough to be here today. So we wish him well and a speedy recovery. And we now move on then to item 9, which is the General Fund Revenue and Capital Final Budget Proposals 25-26. Now, members should all have a flow chart. Seems to have lost mine already, but there we go. About this, and that should help you guide you through the process. Thank you. The time limit for speeches is relaxed with regard to the following speeches. The speech from the Cabinet Member for Finance when moving the motion to adopt the budget being proposed by the Council, by the Cabinet, and group leaders when making a budget statement on behalf of their group. Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets and group leaders are permitted to speak more than once in the debate for the purpose of putting and answering questions. So I'd now like to invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets, Councillor Alicia Lewis, to introduce the report. Bearing in mind she can speak for as long as she wants to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is a rather brave thing to say. So I really vividly remember the first time that I told the leader of this council that I'd really quite like to be Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets. So I said to her on that April afternoon, in a few years, I think it'd be a great job for me. I think it's my dream job, but I'm not quite sure I'm ready. You only get a couple of years in a job like that. And I wanted to make sure that I knew what I'd want to do with such a limited amount of time. Just over a month later, she calls me up and I'm sitting in the back of a bus. And she tells me that she would like me to be the Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets. My immediate answer was a somewhat panicked, are you sure? Are you sure? And to this day, I do still question the answer she gave me. And yet there is a glorious comedic irony in the youngest person to ever hold this office being given the job just before it finishes. There is no, in a few years' time, there's no time to work out what we might want to do with this job. We have only the time that we've been given. We are at the end of days. And that's not just me getting a bit morbid in my old age, though next week does mark my, once again, slow crawl towards the state pension. It is a stark reflection on the future of local government in Cheltenham. So we had the devolution white paper just before Christmas. It's the best Christmas gift I've ever been given. And it raised, quite frankly, more questions than it answered. It left us in the dark as we were trying to shape our budget. How do you plan for the future when you have no idea how long the future is going to be? That's a problem we often have day to day. None of us know whether we'll see the end of this week. But for us, we were faced with a question of whether we would exist for 2 years, 3 years, whether we continue existing forever. We simply did not know. And for most of the sort of consultation and revision periods, we were left guessing. Every scenario we were faced with required very different financial choices. The government did helpfully give us an answer just a week before the budget deadline. So we've had to make some pretty speedy choices in a very tight period of time. In recent weeks, I've caught a little bit of flack, it's fair to say, for being too political when it comes to talking about the budget, especially in the context of local government reorganisation. As if this budget exists in a vacuum, and because it's Cheltenham's budget and it's small and relatively unimportant, that it's somehow not political and that it's kind of an administrative exercise and that we ought to treat it that way. But I just think when we live in a world where wars are raging right now and people are dying right now for the right to assemble and to govern their communities, just like us, this is not apolitical work. And in Donald Trump's America, there are local policymakers in local government who sit in rooms that look quite a lot like this, who are faced with the constant, day in, day out threat of funding cuts, unless they fall in line with the ideology of a government that sees them and their work as waste to be trimmed. This has meant that families fleeing domestic violence with their children have been turned away from shelters and onto the streets because the emergency housing funds have been frozen in an effort to drive efficiency. Disaster relief efforts are stressed well beyond capacity, and preventable viral outbreaks are putting children in hospital. So forgive me a little if you think, and I think, that local government decision-making, particularly control over our spending and how it is spent, is in itself inherently political. Even here in the UK, I don't think we can be complacent. So a strong local government or a strong central government collaborates with local authorities. That's what you'd hope for. You'd hope that they would be willing to learn from us, to value our input, to get a sense that we know our communities better than they ever will, and we can offer them so much expertise. A weak government, however, assumes that without even trying, cooperation is simply impossible. That as long as somebody else has a say, they'll never get their way. And so it chooses the simplest solution on the table: fewer councils, fewer voices, and fewer people to stand in their way. If I came up with a plan and realised I'd have to abolish an entire tier of government to make it work, I'd probably ask myself whether or not it was the right plan. And it is at times like this where things feel incredibly dark, particularly as we read the news, and where the worst almost feels inevitable, that we must stick our necks out. We have to stand for something, because if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. We must not let our future regrets unpack their bags and move in today. We must do all that we can. We must do everything in our power to make a positive dent in the wall of anger and resentment and frustration that defines our politics today. The alternative is simply unthinkably bleak. We may not have all the choices that we wish we did in this room today, but it's not the measure of a man as whether he has all the choices he might wish to have. It's what he does with the choices he does have. We today are living in a critical window of time that may be the last in our lifetimes, in which decisions about Cheltenham are made in Cheltenham for Cheltenham. They're not made in Gloucester. They're not made exclusively in Whitehall. They're made by the people who know Cheltenham best, the people who live in it. So what on earth do you do with a window of time quite as small as the one we have, with so few choices and with this final moment of power and influence over the future of our town? Do you know what I think we should do with it? I think we should go out with a bang and certainly not with a whimper. We're going to make major investments in Cheltenham's much-loved parks and gardens, increasing staff time to maintain their award-winning standards. It's a thing that when we ask, year after year, the people of Cheltenham love more than anything else that we do. So we're investing in it. It's the right choice. We're also installing electricity infrastructure at our festival sites to cut reliance on diesel generators and make sure that our iconic Cheltenham festivals are more sustainable for our planet and can be enjoyed by future generations, whatever local government brings. We're investing in the Golden Valley, which is a new cyber innovation park that many in this room will have heard about time and time again. But in this small window of time we have to play with, I think it's one of the best investments we can make. We're going to create future-proof careers for the people of Cheltenham, particularly the young people, many of whom move away to London or Bristol or many other rather nice places, but places which aren't their home. It's not where they grew up. And people should have the chance to build careers that last a lifetime in the place that they grew up. The Golden Valley will also deliver new homes, transport links, and more green spaces, which Cheltenham could always do with a few more of, even though we have got more than most. It's also homegrown investment. It's Cheltenham investing in Cheltenham for Cheltenham, and that future profits would come back to help fund public services, though it depends to a great extent what the new authority decides to do with them. We'll also never lose sight of the past on which we are building our better tomorrow. We're going to protect Cheltenham's Regency heritage by expanding our planning team, making it easier and quicker to get the advice and permissions that you need to create new spaces and restore much loved older ones. We're going to give back to the people who uphold our communities and to those who uphold the liberties that we hold dear. We'll support veterans by ensuring that Armed Forces Compensation Scheme income isn't counted as we assess council tax discounts. We know of so many veterans in our town who are living just above the poverty line, if that. And this is the small way that we have the power, while we are still an authority, to give back to them. We'll also, at the same time, reopen some of our most under-reused community buildings, bucking the trend of national closures. A fantastic investment in bringing people together and leaving a legacy, as this council, of spaces for people to enjoy for years to come. We'll also create the fiscal breathing room that we need in order to make the most of every last minute of the next few years. Smarter, faster, and far more urgent decisions will be the theme as we count down to our abolition. I don't want us to regret the choices that we could have made or would have made if only we had the money or the means to make them. And so, as far as is practicable in this budget, we're ensuring that we won't be put in that situation. This is the first budget proposal in nearly 5 years where our contribution to balances and reserves far exceeds the new savings we have to find. Anybody who follows local government finance in the news or looks at other councils across the country that are facing bankruptcy or have already gone bankrupt in local government terms knows that that is an incredible achievement. In 2024, for example, our budget required 2.47 million in savings to make just 629k contribution to general balances. That has been a harsh climate to operate in as a council, and it's meant we've had to make choices that we might not otherwise have wished to make. There are no easy saving choices worth 2.7 million, let me tell you. However, in 2025-2026, if you were to back this budget, which I hope you will, we will only need to find 500,000 in new savings or additional income to contribute 560k to general balances and £939,000 to earmark reserves. That turnaround is no accident, it is no stroke of luck, it is the result of hard choices. This budget sets a singular goal to make fewer heartbreaking choices and give us greater options and flexibility as we face an uncertain future in local government. This budget, I believe, delivers that in spades. And more importantly, above everything else, we're safeguarding Cheltenham's future. From the pensions of our hard-working staff, without whom none of the work this council does would get out of this chamber, to protecting the homes and even improving the homes of our CBH tenants who we know and love and make up such an important part of our community. We provide these homes that are safe, clean and affordable. Without us, the future is always uncertain, but we do everything within our power to get them to the best possible position before we get abolished. Whatever comes next, we stand with our town, committed to delivering the best possible services and delivering the best future for Cheltenham. And I think that's something we can be proud of. If you're proud of that too, and you believe this is the right mission for Cheltenham as we face our final days as a local authority, I implore you to back this budget, accept the recommendations and ask any questions you may have.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Excellent speech, if I may say so. Do we have a seconder? Do you want to speak now? Or? Okay, thank you. Right, open the floor to questions to the Cabinet Member. Who would like to kick off? Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the Cabinet Member, given the amounts, let me take D as the house or the place of that people are living as the nominated area that I'm asking the question about. So anyone living in a Schedule D property. The increase is 2.99%. How much is that in cash? I'd just like to know if the member could tell me what that is, given that Schedule D is £244.79 a year. So what is the increase in that? And I may have a supplementary. No.
So I thank the Cabinet Member for housing, and it is an increase of about £7 a year, which is not an insignificant amount of money, but for the services we deliver, it's pretty good value.
Can I therefore, Mr. Mayor, say, when I look at what the other councils are doing, and I look at what Cheltenham Council is doing, and I look at all those areas where we are doing things that actually are not in our purview, and I look at how much somebody in a Schedule D property will pay over the course of the year, not the entire amount, because this is just Cheltenham we're talking about, and the increase of £7 for a 12-month period. And I'm thinking about No Child Left Behind. I'm thinking about all the work we do with organisations, communities, businesses to make Cheltenham what it is and will be. And I think we're doing that for an extra £7 a year. That is amazing. And so I'd like to thank officers and the Cabinet Member and colleagues for the work that they do, because it isn't easy to find £7 these days for many people, but it's even less easy if that £7 isn't there when I think of all the good this council's doing. So thank you very much for doing that, and I'll pay my £7, though I'm not on a Schedule D property.
Thank you. And it's worth bearing in mind that of the residents' council tax that they will be asked to pay, the vast percentage of it goes to the county council and then to the police commissioner. So, yeah. Any more questions? No? Okay. Right, so the next item, we've all had the report from our Section 151 officer, Paul Jones, which was an excellent report, Paul, I have to say, very comprehensive. Anybody got any specific questions to Paul about his reports? No? Okay, thank you very much. I now move on to statements by group leaders, and I invite Councillor Davies to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Councillor Lewis, for that really comprehensive speech introducing the budget. For this to be your first year as Cabinet Member for Finance, feeling initially quite apprehensive about taking on the role and then being faced with devolution and decisions being made so close to the budget submission, it really feels like you've been put in the deep end, I would say. Having read through it, one of the things that I think really sticks out is the role that devolution plays in the budget overall, along with the uncertainty of what the future currently looks like for Cheltenham Borough Council as a whole, and how much longer we have left being something of an unknown undoubtedly makes this more of a difficult challenge. The Greens really like the usage of the money to refurbish the public toilets in Montpellier, which we've talked about a little bit already today, to include the changing places. Public facilities are an absolute necessity, and so it's great to see the money being used to update these and make these facilities more inclusive. We're aware of the delay in delivering it, but we think it's worth taking the extra time to make sure it's done right. So you measure twice, you cut once. On a personal note, I'm really glad to see some of the money going towards apprenticeships. I did an apprenticeship and it took me out of, sort of a more working class background and propelled me forwards into something of a more middle class living situation, which I'm really, really grateful for. And I've only had that due to the support that I had through learning on the job and the education that was funded by my employer. And I know that young people will undoubtedly benefit from these opportunities. Point 12.6 in the budget notes that full council noted in December 2024 that our exposure to gas and oil investments currently stood at £61,000. This is reduced over the last 12 months from £120,000. I just wanted to say this is a really incredible reduction over the course of 12 months. but it is essential we do not stop there and we keep making positive steps to take this number as close to zero as possible. This process has got us thinking what we would like to get on the budget in the future, and so we sought out some advice from officers. One of the suggestions was re-evaluating our car parking charges based on some existing borough council projects elsewhere, which redirects profits for car parking charges to air quality improvement schemes. We've been informed that this requires further consultation before implementation and therefore wouldn't be suitable for this budget. But it is something we would like to be looking into a little bit more throughout the coming year to assess the suitability of. One of the other suggestions was around introducing the option of delivery recycling receptacles to leisure centres instead of to people's homes for free. We hope this would both incentivise people to visit their local leisure centres and community hubs, as well as encouraging more people to recycle, and removing the delivery fee is removing a barrier to entry. This budget has been a relatively refreshing read this week, as it's really lovely when you look at the news. The news is really depressing and really not a fun read at the minute. But it's lovely that we've got the ability to focus on local issues and the things that really, really matter to us, bins, and also how things like our parks and gardens are cared for. I think that's really, really nice to be able to focus on the more localised things in a world that feels quite scary sometimes. I also just wanted to say thank you to all the staff members who worked on the budget and to all of the residents who helped to feed into the budget. We really appreciate all of your hard work in preparing this really comprehensive report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just say congratulations on a really lovely speech? Thank you. Okay, so we've got no amendments to consider. So we're now going to move on to discussing the budget. And I think I need to invite you, Alicia, to formally move the budget. She's already done that, and it's been seconded. So then we're open to debate on the budget. Who would like to? Councillor Took.
I commend this budget, but I also note the questions and comments from Councillors Harman and Nelson, both representatives of the tired Tory administration that has been running GCC for 20 years, and both of whom are presumably up for election on May the 1st. The Liberal Democrat Council has effectively given subsidies to the Tory Council over long periods of time. We paid for the Swindon Road Household Recycling Centre for 50 years, despite the fact that it was the statutory responsibility of the County Council. It was only when the cost became insurmountable that we suggest the County Council step up to the plate and take responsibility. Once again, we're supporting No Child Left Behind, because the Tory government, over 14 years, has created poverty through incompetent economic management and a social security system which is not fit for purpose. The social services provided by the Tory-run Gloucestershire County Council have been substandard. These issues are not our statutory responsibilities, but because we're Liberal Democrats and because we care, we find the money as best we can without sending invoices to Shah Hall or to the failed Prime Ministers of the last 14 years. As they scrabble around trying to find content for their election leaflets, I suspect that representatives of the failing Tory Council will attempt to imply that we can't run things and that we're not good with money. To that, I have a three-word response: Zone 15 parking. The Tory County Council squandered at least an extra £250,000 and possibly considerably more of hard-earned taxpayers' money because they couldn't get it right. I repeat, £250,000 was just wasted by the Tories on GCC. Think how many potholes could have been fixed with that. An area such as St Paul's is littered with them. Moreover, the inconvenience and stress for residents living around there has been considerable. Conservative politicians are in no position to lecture us. In the media, they will desperately try to use this budget to deflect attention from their own sad, failing county council administration, which has limped along through successive scandals for 20 years. We must not let them succeed. On May the 2nd, we will still be here fighting for the people of Cheltenham because we have a mandate and we have a mission. On May the 2nd, with a fair wind, the Tories of Shire Hall will be looking for alternative career options.
Thank you, Councillor Tu. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start off by saying, when I look at all these papers collectively, not just the individual bits, but when I look at it collectively, I see the immense amount of work that must have gone into creating them. So I would like to thank both the officer team and our diligent cabinet member, Councillor Lewis, for presenting these papers to us today. But just drawing down into them a little bit, I'm using Band D as an example. I think it's worth saying, if you look at the amount that Cheltenham Borough Council takes from that total, it's less than 11%. Less than 11% of the total that everybody pays every month, every year, for all of the collective services that we receive. And what makes it even more stark to me is that when you look at the Police and Crime Commissioner's share of the same thing, it's over 14%. So you're going to know what I'm going to say next. I'd like to know perhaps what he does with his 14% when we do so much with our less than 11%. And that leaves a balance of almost 75% to the County Council. And then we have to read things in the press about the criticism that we are having over things like the HRC, which was never our responsibility in the first place. And I know we've got a member of the press here today, Carmelo. When I read the articles in Gloucestershire Live, it seems to me that the word huge is a favourite word. And I think your colleague Phil Norris, that must be his favourite word of all, huge, because he seems to put it in every story that he writes about. But I think on this occasion, I think it would be most appropriate to thank both Councillor Lewis and the team in finance for the huge amount of work that has been put in to creating this budget paper. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Telford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Tuke raised some really, really good points on all the areas where we've been going above and beyond as a council to provide discretionary services and step in where others have frankly failed and let our residents down. And I note the reference to Zone 15 being in mine and Barbara's ward. And I'm glad the county have finally listened after many years of the residents and us having to talk to them about it. But when you see the amount of remedial works they're now doing and the amount of things that last time around they just completely missed, they're having to put up so many extra signposts where they were not compliant with the regulations that they spent years having to deal with. You can see how they have wasted so much money and how they're continually wasting money. And I'm glad they're now sorting it out, but it shouldn't have been like that. And this budget, this Cheltenham budget, doesn't waste money like that. Despite limited income, and as Councillor Collins notes, only around 11% of the council tax, we do so much. We go above and beyond for our residents. And as we look to the future, obviously, that is very concerning. And I hope we can set the standard with this budget and the last few that we get after this, that any future unitary authority or authorities will have to build upon. We can set the standard to go, no, this is what our town expects and what our residents expect. This is the level they want and deserve, so they can build from that instead of going down from a much lower level that the county has seemingly been provided. And I'm sure all councillors have read the budget and are aware, but something that the public will be interested in, and one of the things that's changed from the draft budget to now, is that inclusion of the growth item for £90,000 towards streets and grounds works. And I think this is welcome from everyone because it's going to allow us proper staff cover to get out there and tackle things like street cleaning and street sweeping, which I know is such a big issue to so many of our residents in my ward and across our town. So I'm delighted that this extra resource could be included in the budget, especially with all the uncertainty that we're facing with local government reorganisation and the mess that is the world right now. So I think the officers and Councillor Lewis and everyone should really be commended for achieving this financially sound budget. And despite all of that uncertainty and despite everyone else's failings, that we are achieving so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't seen anybody else wanting to speak. Is anybody? No? I'll just say a few words, then I'll call Councillor Clucas. Year on year, it just makes me so proud to be a member of this council. The way we run our council financially is frankly second to none. So huge thanks to the people on my right and all your teams and Alicia. We are in a great place. We don't have sleepless nights. And when I look at the detail in the budget, it's amazing that despite what's going on in other councils, we have still got growth in there. And I'm particularly pleased at the growth in the planning service. Planning is really critical to our town. And we're going to have some significant planning applications coming forward in the next 12 months, 24 months, as we know, on the west side of town. And every single planning application needs a huge amount of resource. So I'm delighted about that. And I think our planning team now is getting up to full speed, and we've got some great people there who have to put up with an awful lot, but do a great job. And then when you look at the capital budget, and again, there's some really great stuff in there. Noise monitoring equipment. How many of our residents moan to us about noise? And this monitoring equipment at last will enable us to actually take that seriously and do some prosecutions, I hope. Motorcycle noise particularly annoys me, and I'm hoping that might help there. Enhancement to our play area is so important. You know, Pitfield Park is probably the best play area in the whole of the county. And so we can emulate that in other parks. That will be truly amazing. And a big one for me is the investment in CCTV. As Councillor Atherstone will know, and others, in our engagement recently with young people, one of the biggest things they talk about is fear of going out at night, fear of walking the streets, whether it's during race day or whether it's just normal activity, real fear. And that's came over to us with the Pitfield school students and others. So that investment in CCTV is to be welcomed. And I'm delighted that the money is still in the budget for the Sandford Park toilets. We do need to get on with that now. And I know it's not the fault of officers that it hasn't happened. It's partly because the local community isn't sure what it wants. But I'm so pleased that that's still being retained, and we will try and spend that, I hope, in the coming year. So thank you. Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things to say. Thank you for your contribution, Julian. I think it was really good, and I think it really hit the nail on the head. Because we're in a situation, let me just say this. The other night, I was going through some historic photos, and I saw children on streets with no shoes on their feet and no coat, and obviously without anybody with them except themselves. And I thought, are we really getting back to that? Because one of the things that strikes me about how things are in our modern world is that it's very easy to tick a box and say, oh, we've done that. I'm afraid I think the county does that an awful lot. I think the police commissioner does too. And what happens is the things that need to be changed aren't. They carry on. And I hope you'll forgive me for this, but I'm going to speak for a moment about No Child Left Behind. Because what that did, and Peter, it was your idea initially, so thank you. What that did was actually to say to this town, we've got kids, we have families who are in real difficulty. Government doesn't want to know. Other areas like the county, no. So what we did was bring that together. Not just bring it together for the few, but for the many. I think, if I'm right, Vix, it's about 7,000 children who've been helped. You think about that in a town the size of Cheltenham. That's a heck of a lot of children and families. And I say this, it could not have been done without the work of officers here. And I have to say, Tracy Brown, Kelly Patterson, Helen Down did a huge amount of work on that, and I thank them for it. and I thank officers for providing the resources for them so to do. But I also want to thank organisations like IT Schools Africa, now sadly no longer that name, but still doing the job, like CCP, like the local organisations that came together, not just in the pandemic, but since then, the food networks, which I know you, Councillor Williams, will know very, very well. The food networks that have come together and worked to make sure that our kids are okay. And I just think that all of that and what we are doing in housing with uniforms, shoes, materials for schools, what our businesses are doing in donating IT equipment so our children can have that even when they can't afford it and have access to the internet for their education is just fantastic. And so I want to say thank you to all of you. And I want to say thank you to officers for the work they've done, and to those who came with the original idea, which we managed to work on, and to Vix, who has now taken that forward. I think it is a great, great thing we do. And you know what? The county wouldn't have done it. A big organisation like a county council will think, oh no, we're doing all right there. You know, we're ticking the boxes. This is not about ticking boxes. It's about people, it's about care, it's about being able to do things because you see this every single day of your life when you're walking along the streets, going to your schools, knowing that children aren't getting proper SEND work done with them in schools. All of that is vital to the health of this town. So, Mr. Mayor, I hope you'll forgive me for jabbering on a bit, but it just strikes me that this town should be proud of what it's done, that the people here should be proud of what they've done. And I am anticipating and hoping that over the next 4 years, while we're still here, we will show the rest of them how to do it, what to do, and the fact that it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. We always love your jabber. Anybody else before I ask Councillor Lewis? Sorry, I didn't see. Councillor Jeffrey, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't think I was shrinking that much for drinking violet, but thank you anyway. Councillor Lewis, thank you for this budget. Having stood in your shoes, not literally because I've got massive feet, but having stood in your shoes this time last year, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And you're right to quote that figure of 2.4 million. It was a shocking moment. And the previous years, so actually to see this come into fruition now and to have a bit of enviousness that you actually got some growth in the budget is nice to see. I could reiterate what all colleagues have said across this council, all the good things we're doing, and I probably will touch on some of them. But the one point I think I will reiterate, which is this is inevitably a political budget, because these are political choices. We are politicians. I've been around this block now several times, and it never ceases to amaze me the amount of times we have to move around and find a solution to incompetence and failure. Now, I can look up into the county council. They are incompetent and they fail, whether that's children, whether that's young people, whether it's in our roads. We can all see that. I look up at government and how they almost single-handedly trashed our national economy in one foul swoop, and how we're still paying the price of that now across all of our individual households. So yeah, we as a collective group of politicians find ways and means and solutions to those incompetence and those failures. We do it. Luckily, we have a team of officers, and luckily we have hundreds of people working for this council who view Cheltenham like we view Cheltenham, I think, and like the residents view Cheltenham. It's a very special place. So this budget underpins what I think a lot of us think of in Cheltenham, whether it's the economy, it supports those businesses and the economic drives of the town. It supports the parks and gardens as we're continuing to reinvest additional money in there. We're building new homes. We're continuing with the Golden Valley investment. I don't need to say much about that. It's just done to death, I think, and it's rightly so. But the one for me, and it will always be the one for me, is the leaving no child behind, left behind, because we can't. We can't gloss over that divide we have in our communities, what drives me in all the things I do. So, Councillor Lewis, thank you for this budget. I'm wholeheartedly going to support it across the board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other members? Okay, Councillor Lewis, would you like to respond or sum up? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, sorry, Paul. I mean, in many ways, it's possibly better that you can see less of me than the alternatives. We'll take that as a win. I mean, firstly, I do want to support the Mayor in what he said in saying that our financial strategy here in Cheltenham is second to none. I think that's absolutely right. Our finance team here at Cheltenham are fundamentally the best in the country. If we could sell them to close the budget deficit, we'd do it several times over, but we certainly never would. Thank you to Paul, Gemma and John for the enormous amount of work they've done and their whole teams for making... There we go.
So I think,
That's all right. System's just gone down. So I don't want to interrupt your flow, but
as we were,
yourself, that this is going to be a problem for the recording vote. We've got the paper. Okay, come back. We thought of everything.
we've got a bit by hand.
I have to go. It has to be recorded, so it means I've got to read out everyone's
I'll read
name
out, yeah.
individually.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Lewis, did you want to carry on? Sorry about that.
Start again. Sorry, Councillor Lewis.
Do I need to start again or can I carry on? I'm going to carry on because I think possibly the jokes aren't funny the second time. I mean, just to carry on from that very eloquent contribution from Councillor Collins, I wish I could say that I hadn't had sleepless nights over this budget. I'm glad that the Mayor hasn't, but I certainly have. I thank Julian in particular. There were so many spectacular speeches in this debate, but Julian, he's always a man of robust words, is our Julian. And I won't name names because it isn't tasteful. But the County Council administration have been firing potshots in the press over the bow at this budget. Frankly, that's slightly embarrassing given that the nature of the comments they're making and the content of those comments suggests they haven't read our budgets in quite some time. But I do imagine they have other things to be worried about at the moment. Flo, as always, was immensely eloquent. Every time she stands up, you know you're in for an absolute treat. And I'm proud to say this budget is also, it's not a box-ticking exercise. It's a real down-to-brass-tacks review of everything we do, everything we spend on it, and how best to spend every last penny that the people of Cheltenham trust us with. No stone was unturned, and every goal we have was invested in as much as we possibly could. I'd also like to thank Pete for his incredibly generous secondment. It's slightly odd because I seconded his last budget and now he's seconding mine, which is really quite sweet. And I do thank him for all the advice and support he's been able to give me, particularly late at night over WhatsApp when I've been panicking about everything going horribly wrong. Pete has been my rock. I'd also like to thank the Green Party for their very generous speech on this budget. Apprenticeships are also something I'm really proud that we're investing in. I've met lots of the apprentices that Cheltenham Borough Council has hired over the years, many of whom have gone on to full-time roles and careers at this council. They contribute enormously to the running of this council. We would not be where we are without them, and it's great that we can offer more young people that opportunity. Exposure to oil and gas is also something that was mentioned. It is in many ways a matter of time. We're not adding any additional investments, so it's just a case of letting the ones we have run their course so that we get out of oil and gas without costing the taxpayer an enormous amount of money. Because as this budget says, you know, we're in a good place, but we certainly haven't got spare change, so best not to lose any of what we have. I'm also happy to discuss car parking charges moving forward. It's always interested in outside perspectives. Though we are very keen, despite these slight setbacks, to invest more in electric vehicle charging in our car parks across Cheltenham, because we think it's great. Cheltenham should be a great place to be a tourist or a resident who has an electric vehicle. It makes us a more attractive place to live, work and visit. Thank you, otherwise, to everybody for their contributions, and thank you to the public for all their contributions to this budget. Every comment made and those who I went to see as part of the budget process has really contributed to making this budget what it is. Also, thank you to my cabinet colleagues who have endured months after months after months of me finding new ways to say we haven't got any money at every single cabinet meeting going forward, but have also been incredibly generous in accommodating the tough decisions that we have had to make this budget stack up and to make the investment that we want to make in the next few years possible. So thank you for them. It hasn't always been easy, but they have been doing it in very good spirits. And thank you to Pete and Rowena for everything they've done as we've moved through this. I mean, obviously, Rowena did trust me a month after saying I'd like this job in a few years to do this. And I hope I've lived up to that trust. And of course, Pete has been, as I said, my rock and an enormous source of good advice and practical common sense. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So how are we going to do a vote?
It might be easier. Okay, so the system is still live streaming to YouTube, so we don't want to switch it off and switch it back on again in case it knocks all that out as well. So we're going to continue with the meeting in terms of the live stream. But what it does mean is we can't use the electronic voting system because we have to have a recorded vote on the budget. So we're going to go back to the old-fashioned way of doing it, where I'm going to call out each of your names when someone passes me the piece of paper. And you're going to have to indicate whether you vote for the budget, against the budget, or whether you wish to abstain. And we'll have to do the same for the HRA budget on the next item as well. So might be a bit longer than normal, but here we go. So, yeah, bingo. Councillor Frank Allen. 4, thank you. Councillor Glenn Andrews. 4, thank you. Yeah, that's why I'm repeating it, because otherwise I'm going to have to keep pressing it on and off every second. Councillor Victoria Atherstone. 4, thank you. Councillor Baker. 4, thank you. Councillor Garth Barnes. 4, thank you. Councillor Dilys Barrell. 4, thank you. Councillor Angie Boys. 4, thank you. Councillor Julia Chandler. 4, thank you. Councillor Jackie Chellin. 4, thank you. Councillor Barbara Clark. She's gone. Councillor Flo Clucas. 4, thank you. Councillor Mike Collins. 4, thank you. Councillor Ashley Davis. 4, thank you. Councillor Chris Day. 4, thank you. Councillor Juan Carlos Garcia Clamp. 4, thank you. Councillor Steve Harvey. 4, thank you. Councillor Rowena Hay. 4, thank you. Councillor Sandra Holiday. 4, thank you. Councillor Martin Horwood. 4, thank you. Councillor Peter Jeffries. 4, thank you. Councillor Tabby Joy. 4, thank you. Councillor Alicia Lewis. 4, thank you. Councillor Cahal Lynch. 4, thank you. Councillor Andy Mutton. 4, thank you. Councillor Tony Oliver. 4, thank you. Councillor Ben Orme. 4, thank you. Councillor Helen Pemberton. 4, thank you. Councillor Richard Pinniger. 4, thank you. Councillor Julie Sankey. 4, thank you. Councillor Stan Smith. 4, thank you. Councillor Steve Steinhardt. 4, thank you. Councillor Isaac Telford. 4, thank you. Councillor Julian Took. 4, thank you. Councillor Suzanne Williams. 4, thank you. Have I read everybody's name out? I tried to miss out the people that were absent. Excellent. In that case, Mayor, I can confirm that the vote is unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we move on to item 10, which is the housing revenue account final budget proposals. And we're aware of the budget flow chart. We've already talked about that. So if I can invite Cabinet Member for Finance and Assets, Councillor Alicia Lewis, to introduce the report. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So arm's length management organisations commonly known as ALMOs, were a product of the early 2000s. They were a Labour government's response to the housing challenges of their time. A lot of pretty good things came out of the Blair government. I know, I'm one of them. But the incentives and opportunities that made the ALMO model attractive and made it work for us as an authority have faded over time in many ways, like I have. And that's why, over this past year, Cheltenham Borough Homes has come back to becoming part of Cheltenham Borough Council. We brought them back in-house, ensuring more joined-up working and creating a launchpad for delivering the ambitious social housing strategy that our town deserves. This report does lay out the stark reality of trying to deliver social housing anywhere, but particularly in Cheltenham. In Cheltenham, where rents are high and home ownership is increasingly out of reach, particularly for families, securing homes within the bounds of what we can charge our tenants and what our tenants can actually afford is a constant challenge. Demand grows every single day as residents are priced out of an ever more expensive, unsafe and insecure private rental sector. It's tough to deliver the number of homes we need. It's tougher to deliver the mix of homes that we need. The hardest part in many ways is maintaining them on a very, very, very tight budget surplus. But this is Cheltenham Borough Council, and one thing we do not do is back down from a challenge. So I'm glad to say that for the first time in years, this HRA budget has been created and will be delivered in-house. And I know councillors across this chamber will join me in welcoming our housing team and all the staff from CBH back into the team at CBC. I know that from those I've spoken to, they're very glad to be back with us and we're very glad to have them. But let us not pretend. This project that we are undertaking is enormous. The challenge is enormous. We're setting aside everything from over £750,000 to support fire safety improvements post-Grenfell, all the way through to our bold decarbonisation programme, which is right and good because it makes our homes both more sustainable for the planet, but also more sustainable to live in, cheaper to live in, warmer to live in, safer to live in for our residents. We're addressing both the climate crisis and the cost of living crisis head on. This HRA does not shy away from the cost of doing the right thing. But for everybody who's read it, you know that cost is pretty eye-watering. But the human cost of inaction, of failing to do what we know we must do and what this HRA sets out for us to undertake and to achieve, the human cost of that is far, far greater than anything we could ever budget for. So we're tackling the challenge of voids, properties that we own that are currently unsafe to live in. We're developing an action plan to bring them back into use and, where necessary, dispose of them to ensure that we can invest in more homes that are safe, clean and easy to live in. My good friend, Max Wilkinson, who is now working elsewhere, set this council a very ambitious 180 million social housing investment target over the lifetime of the Golden Valley development. And this HRA is a serious step towards that goal with just sort of £40 million set up to invest in existing homes and new acquisitions. This HRA makes it very clear. We have the ambition, we have the plan, and now with the support of full council, we can deliver. Colleagues and friends, I ask you to approve this report and the recommendations enclosed so that we can get to work. Any questions, do feel free to just ask.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, first of all? Councillor Jeffries, thank you. You'd like to speak now, Pete, or later on? Okay. So do we have any questions for Councillor Lewis, first of all? No? Okay. In which case then, get this right. And I invite Councillor Davis to make a statement on behalf of the Green Group, if you want to. No? Okay, thank you. Right, so I'll open it to debate then. Anybody who'd like to speak on this important item? Councillor Lucas. Not more jabber.
Visibility is all. It's simply to say that the report is a great report and I would recommend it to you. But actually, the report is only what it is. At the core of what we do, at the core are our tenants. This isn't about bricks and mortar. It's about our tenants, their involvement, what they see, what they do, what they can actually influence. And I'm so pleased our tenants panel, our leaseholder panel are really active, and that having both represented on the Cabinet Housing Committee is terrific, because I have to say, the ideas flow. Do they not, Julian, who chairs it? And thank you for that. It is just tremendous. So the money that we're talking about today is a tool to enable our tenants, the people that we want to serve and see do well, actually feel not only do they have a voice, but actually the money is there to help that voice to achieve what it wishes to achieve, to be part of the decision-making process, part of the process where they can make suggestions. And indeed, this is happening now all the time. And it's just a wonderful thing to see and experience. So thank you for the report and the heart of that report, which is the people who live here in Cheltenham, in our properties, and those who will come to live in Cheltenham in our properties when the new ones are built.
Thank you. I would just add that for me, Cheltenham has really led the way in building social housing. And CBH did an amazing job, but what they were a little bit slow on, in my view, was delivering new housing. And I think that with CBH now coming into the council and with the expertise that we have in the council, we really are going to start seeing, I hope, an increase in the provision of social housing in our town, and whether that's in Monkscroft or Swindon Road or on the west of Cheltenham in due course. There's nothing more important than we can do, in my view, than provide and build social housing. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Councillor Jeffrey, did you want to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Exactly right. More homes is what we need. Let us not forget this is about housing. And again, we've had a national housing crisis all since the day I was born. And all of my life, it's been a national housing crisis. The budget, again, sets the foundation for continuing all the good things we do in housing. But I did say it's about homes, but let's not forget those people that haven't got homes. And sadly, once again, something we cannot solve. As much as we do have houses, we do invest in our houses, and we do invest in housing services, there is a national blight, and that is homelessness. And I stand here supporting this budget, inevitably, but I don't want us to forget about those homeless people that exist on our streets somehow. The government, in its infinite wisdom, did one thing right, in my view, in the last 14 years. I say one thing, maybe two things. I'll reserve one other thing in case there's something else right by accident. But during the pandemic, they swept up all of the homeless people and took them off the streets and provided accommodation and a safe place to sleep. And their political choice was, when the pandemic lessened, they turfed them out back on the streets. That is a national disgrace. Now, it's something we can't fix, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sorry to go on and ruin and put a downer on the meeting per se, but it needs to be said, I think. So it's incumbent that whatever we do in terms of our housing and our budgets for our housing, we continue to build those council houses as much as we can, but it does have an impact. So that's my piece. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis, did you want to come back?
Just briefly, possibly to match the length of the debate, to thank Pete for his contribution. I know he's very passionate about housing. He's also leading the charge on delivering some more housing. So I'm as keen as he is to see him deliver some of those. But no, thank you to everybody. I hope that we back this HRA budget.
Okay, so we're going to go same sort of vote again?
Yeah, I'm on the council tax, I'm afraid.
There we go. Okay, over to you.
Okay, here we go again. I'll do what I did before and just repeat it back, save me keep putting the mic on and off. Okay, so Councillor Frank Allen. For. Councillor Glenn Andrews. For. Councillor Victoria Atherstone. For. Councillor Paul Baker. For. Councillor Garth Barnes. For. Councillor Dilys Barrell. For. Councillor Angie Boys. For. Councillor Julia Chandler. For. Councillor Jackie Chellin. For. Councillor Flo Clucas. For. Councillor Mike Collins. For. Councillor Ashley Davis. For. Councillor Chris Day. For. Councillor Juan Carlos Garcia Clamp. For. Councillor Steve Harvey. 4. Councillor Rowena Hay. 4. Councillor Sandra Holiday. 4. Councillor Martin Horwood. 4. Councillor Peter Jeffries. 4. Councillor Tabby Joy. 4. Councillor Alicia Lewis. 4. Councillor Cahal Lynch. 4. Councillor Andy Mutton. 4. Councillor Tony Oliver. 4. Councillor Ben Orme. 4. Councillor Helen Pemberton. 4. Councillor Richard Pinniger. 4. Councillor Julia Sankey. 4. Councillor Stan Smith. 4. Councillor Steve Steinhardt. 4. Councillor Isaac Telford. 4. Councillor Julian Took. 4. Councillor Suzanne Williams. 4. Just double check everyone's voted. I called everyone's name. Yeah, in that case, Mayor, I confirm that's unanimous.
Thank you very much, Claire. Item 11 is the council tax resolution. And so once again, I'll invite Cabinet Member Alicia Lewis to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And after 2 very long speeches, I'm sure you will all be relieved to know this is both my shortest and my last of the meeting. Don't get too excited. It is very short. Today, you as a council, unanimously, thanks for that, I do appreciate it, have approved one of our most ambitious budgets this council has ever set. And now I'm asking you to approve the council tax that will support it. We receive just under 11% of Peterswell Council tax, with the rest going to Gloucestershire County Council and to the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. With that, we do an absolutely incredible amount of work. Everything from preserving and enhancing our green flag-worthy parks to keeping Cheltenham's award-winning nighttime economy safe. It's slightly odd, I've always found, that this isn't a separate agenda item because those who have voted in favour of the budget, which is all of you, have already in principle agreed the council tax rate. But that's local democracy for you, best to check twice. Please accept the recommendations set out in this report and I welcome any questions members have on this matter.
Do we have a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Any questions to the Cabinet Member? Nope. Okay, thank you. In that case, I think we move to the vote.
Does anyone want to debate?
Oh, you want, sorry, did I not say, I missed out the debate bit. Go on, Councillor Telford, sorry.
I won't keep you long because I know, if anything, my dog's probably getting annoyed when he's waiting at home. And obviously this budget has turned into just a little bit of a county council bashing. And you just indulge me to do one last bit. Obviously, it was mentioned earlier that we only get around 11% of the council tax. And obviously, if you look at that, residents will note that's just under 250 quid a year on a Band E property. And while we have challenges to face, I'm sure I can point to things that residents like, even within my own portfolio, 90% satisfaction almost with Parks and Gardens, delivered from this tiny slice, thanks to hardworking officers, Yubico, and all of our fantastic volunteers and friends of groups. We've got 99.97% collection accuracy for waste and recycling and an expansive and expanding range of things collected at the curbside. That could be just the 250 quid that you spend a year alone. That's not even mentioning all the things that we do outside of that, all the things that everyone else sat on this bench's portfolios entail, No Child Left Behind, all of our investment and positive forward-thinking things we do for 250 quid a year, which is not an insignificant amount of money to people, and I'm aware of that. But when you compare it to the county council 74%, that's 1,700 quid, you know, they've got to provide the roads and the pavements and the failing social care. They've got a much larger responsibility and a much larger share of it for that, but they are, frankly, have been letting us down and letting our town and our county down. And we are, with that small slice, that 250 quid that you spend, we are stepping in and filling in a lot of the roles where they've let us down, frankly. And I think it should be commended how much is achieved for that, and as mentioned in the budget earlier. So I just hope residents, when they look at this and they see, you know, voting for council tax go up by 7 quid on our side each year, they bear that in mind when they see that coming out of their bank each month. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? No? Thank you very much. Councillor Lewis, did you want to? No? So we'll now go to the vote. Thank you.
Last recorded vote, and then the next items you can go back to a good old show of hands. Okay, Same again then. Councillor Frank Allen. 4. Councillor Glenn Andrews. 4. Councillor Victoria Atherstone. 4. Councillor Paul Baker. 4. Councillor Garth Barnes. 4. Councillor Dilys Barrell. 4. Councillor Angie Boys. 4. Councillor Julia Chandler. 4. Councillor Jackie Chellin. 4. Councillor Flo Clucas. 4. Councillor Mike Collins. 4. Councillor Ashley Davis. 4. Councillor Chris Day. 4. Councillor Juan Carlos Garcia Clamp. 4. Councillor Steve Harvey. 4. Councillor Rowena Hay. 4. Councillor Sandra Holiday. 4. Councillor Martin Hallwood. 4. Councillor Peter Jeffries. 4. Councillor Tabby Joy. 4. Councillor Alicia Lewis. 4. Councillor Cahal Lynch. 4. Councillor Andy Mutton. 4. Councillor Tony Oliver. 4. Councillor Ben Orme. 4. Councillor Helen Pemberton. 4. Councillor Richard Pinniger. 4. Councillor Julie Sankey. 4. Councillor Stan Smith. 4. Councillor Steve Steinhardt. 4. Councillor Isaac Telford. 4. Councillor Julian Tuke. 4. Councillor Suzanne Williams. 4. Check everyone's voted. Yeah, I called everyone's name. Excellent. In that case, Mayor, that's also unanimous.
Thank you, Claire. For item then 12, which is Gambling Act 2005, Statement of Principles, and I'll ask Cabinet Member of Safety and Communities, Councillor Atherstone, to present her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Gambling Act 2005 requires this council to produce, consult on and publish a statement of principles to apply when exercising our functions under the Act. The Gambling Act is primary legislation regulating all forms of gambling activity in the UK. Under the Act, gambling is defined as gaming, betting, and participation in a lottery. The Act sets out a number of licensing objectives that the Council is bound by when discharging any of our functions under the Act. They are preventing gambling from being a source of crime or disorder, being associated with crime or disorder, or being used to support crime, ensuring that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way, and protecting children and other vulnerable people from being harmed or exploited by gambling. We promote our licensing objectives through cooperation and partnership with responsible authorities, local businesses and residents. When the gambling policy was previously approved here in Cheltenham, we had 11 licensed betting premises, 1 track licence and 2 adult gaming centres. Today, we have the same total number of premises, but a slightly different shift, with 2 less betting shops and 2 more adult gambling centres. The Act also requires that the Statement of Principles, which is our policy, are kept under review and must be republished at least once every 3 years. We published our existing Statement of Principles in 2022. I have supported our officer's recommendation that our current gambling policy remains unchanged and is readopted by the Council for a further 3 years. This is because the policy has been reviewed in accordance with the statutory requirements and there have been no substantial changes to either legislation or national guidance. As such, there are no proposed changes to the Statement of Principles. However, central government are currently consulting on a white paper called High Stakes: Gambling Reform for the Digital Age, following a review of the Gambling Act 2005. Once their findings have been published in 2025, and in line with advice from the Gambling Commission, our Statement of Principles will be reviewed again, and any changes to that document will be subject to full consultation with all stakeholders. As such, I ask my fellow members to please approve the recommendations as set out in the report, and I welcome any question or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Joy. Sorry, Tabby.
Sorry, thank you. So I really welcome saying this just because of the impact that gambling can have on, families and communities. I was a bit curious because in item 1.2 of the Statement of Principles, it does mention that the Gambling Commission says that the requirement in relation to children is explicitly to protect them from being harmed or exploited by gambling. And I think that having a look at the equality impact assessment of it as well, something that I'm a little bit cautious of is the fact that any young children or young people in the care of anyone with a gambling addiction, obviously their needs could potentially be eclipsed by reliance or dependence on gambling. So I was just wondering if there was any way of kind of saying, even if they're not directly being drawn into gambling centres with the purpose of gambling, would they not be in some ways financially impacted or their quality of life affected by a caretaker or caregiver who's actually, in the throes of gambling addiction? Has that been considered in any capacity?
Thank you, Councillor Joy, for your very good question. Actually, throughout the entire policy, there are, as you've probably read already, based on different types of gambling or gaming premises, there are very robust rules in terms of how children can and cannot engage with gambling and betting. When it comes to individuals that might perhaps influence or exploit them, you've rightly pointed out, and I've had an update from officers in that in September 2024, GCC's public health team met with Gloucestershire's licensing officer group, which is the county working group who share our common standards with. And they have been committed to working with the group to draft a local area profile for each of the local authorities. And that will help us to better understand the local picture for sort of gambling-related harm here in the borough, which we hope will obviously explore what you've raised there too. Thank you.
Can I just ask what? So I think the local area profiles alluded to in section 4. Are you going to potentially update the draft policy just to include what you've just said to clarify it?
Sorry, yes. When we go through the review, once we receive the updated guidance, then we will address that as well at the same time. Thank you.
Any other member? And I would just like to just say a couple of things on this. I think we were all hugely frustrated that we were unable, and that we are unable, it seems to me, to control the growth and proliferation of betting shops and gaming establishments in our town. Our planning committee officers decided to refuse an application in the high street, went to appeal, and we lost. And it seems to me that as a local authority, we are impotent in our ability to control these establishments. And I don't know whether the government review is going to encompass a review of the criteria that local authorities can have for considering future new applications for these, because it's very difficult in planning to do very much about it, it seems. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. I was just discussing that with officers, because this is also something that I have looked to explore with officers over the last couple of months, in that what sort of scope do we have to have better control over the concentration and the numbers of gambling and betting and gaming facilities in our town. So this can be addressed, but it is a planning issue, not a licensing issue. So I look forward to working with you on that. Thank you.
It's funny, isn't it? You would think the Gambling Act might have something to do with this, but clearly not. Right, okay. Anybody else like to speak? No? Okay, thank you, Victoria. Did you want to make any further comments?
Just thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Okay, so we then move to the vote. This is going to be
Traditional good old show of hands.
a show of hands. Those in favour of the report, please show. That should be unanimous, I would
I
think.
think it's unanimous. Just
Yeah.
double check. There's no.
Any abstentions? Any against? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We then move on to item 13, revisions to the Constitution. And I invite Councillor Hay to present her report.
Thank you, Mayor. So our constitution is our living and breathing rule book, really, I think, for want of a better word. And therefore, like any good rule book, it needs to move with the times and be amended where it needs to be, so that it's very much a living document. And I'm pleased today to present the latest amendments to that to our constitution. And I've got a really helpful group who sit on the members' a constitution working group. And very much thank them for their continued support in driving this important document forward. There are three main points in this report today that I want to raise with you. I think the first one is the one that actually excites me the most, I suppose. If that sounds a bit sad, doesn't it? Getting excited about a constitution, but it is all about actually exactly those things that within our constitution, within our supplementary planning framework, is that how can we actually make sure that we benefit our communities the most and do the right thing. So for me, the government made revisions to the Procurement Act back in 2023. And those new rules now mean that this council can actually have much more flexibility on the suppliers that we use. So naturally, our first leaning will be to our local suppliers, whether that be for catering, whether that be for building, whatever it might be. And that has to be a good thing for the residents and the economy of Cheltenham. So secondly, there were a number of issues raised about the way that we ask and our questions deadline. So the committee looked at that again, and what we've said is that where members are asked, so I'm asking for support today to support the introduction of an urgent question provision, whereby I, as the leader with relevant chair or mayor, would have the discretion to accept questions after the published deadline. For example, where a matter generated significant public interest, this would mean that where there is this discretion is exercised, the question could be submitted up to 48 hours ahead of the meeting. And that proposed amendment reflects the feedback that we've had from members and the public regarding the question deadline being before the publication of the agenda. I'd also remind members that the forward plan actually is always quite a good tool to look at, because most things are on that. And that's a good way of keeping abreast of what's to come moving forward. The last one is that the Audit and Compliance Governance Committee and will now become, so the Standards Committee will now be amalgamated into that rather than a standalone, because actually, as in reality, the Standards Committee hasn't met for a good many years. And it absolutely, if you think about the reason that the Standards Committee exists, it's all about its natural home would be in audit, compliance and governance. And because it provides a more streamlined governance structure by allowing one committee to have focused oversight of those governance matters, as well as facilitating independent assurance through the addition of independent people onto that audit committee, and compliance and governance committee, which we all know was very much a recommendation that came out that we should have those independent members. There are some minor tweaks, but those are the real big ones that I've just wanted to bring to members' attention. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them on that. If not, please, I hope you support the recommendations. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. I just had one question around the public questions aspect of this. We too have had feedback from many residents about the want to contribute a question after the deadline. So I know that a lot of people will be really happy to see this. Is there not some sort of threshold for what you're defining as public interest, enough public interest to introduce a question, or is that sort of up for debate depending on the item?
I think from reading the amendments and what I believe is the right place, is the right thing, is that actually it is at discretion of the leader in consultation with either the mayor or the chair to come to that decision.
My thought process more being what with the idea of public interest, is there not a certain threshold of public interest that needs to be hit for that to be considered? How are you measuring what urgent looks like, I guess?
I think if one person came to me with one single question that said it's urgent that I ask this question, I would look at the question and think, do I believe that that's legitimate? Is that one that actually could wait, or is it urgent? I think if it wasn't urgent, if I've got 50 people, you know, and I think, yeah, if I've got 50 people saying that it's urgent that they ask this question with real concerns, then I'm not likely to turn that down. So I think it's on the basis of each question that comes in, because we all know that at different times of the year and in different places, the questions that come in some are genuine, some are more politically motivated. So I think you have to bear that in mind as well. Does that answer your question?
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay. We just vote with hands.
Yeah.
Again, those in favour, please.
I think that's everybody.
Thank you. Looks unanimous again, but any abstentions? Any against? So unanimous. Thank you. Item 14 is the council diary. Councillor Hay.
I don't know whether to turn tail and run, because somebody always complains about the council diary. But it is what it is. And you all know how many meetings we have that need to be incorporated into the diary. We do it, or it is done, in the best possible way to gain the most people present at any of those meetings. You're never going to please all of the people all the time. It's never going to be perfect. There are some dates which simply don't suit working people, but there are certain dates in the diary fiscally that we actually have to comply with. So be it that people can't come. We have to recognise that. But I think the amount of work that goes into that diary, it doesn't seem like much, does it? Because it's just a diary. It's a diary. We've all got a diary. But we all know how easy it is to get things wrong in our diaries as well at different times, especially those people who operate 2 or 3 or even 4 diaries. I'm just glad I've got one. And that. So if, you know, what I'm asking for is for council to approve and support the council diary for next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Debate? Move to the vote. Those in favour?
That's everybody.
That's everybody. And no abstentions? No one against? Great. Thank you all. And then finally, very important item actually, council order of precedence, nomination for mayor-elect, and I'll invite Gareth Edmondson to present his report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep this brief. This is the annual order of precedent, which sets out the order and eligibility for becoming mayor. The actual election of the mayor and deputy mayor will take place at the annual general meeting. So this is just to note but the two individuals that are down as the prospective mayor and deputy mayor are Councillor Willingham and Councillor Horde. I will leave it there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. It says questions. Has anyone got any questions? Okay. Debate. Rush of hands. Okay, just move to the vote then. Those in favour, please show.
You're allowed to vote.
You against, Martin? Okay. Any abstentions? Anyone against? Great. Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Item 16, notice of motions. There are none. Any other business of urgency? There is none. Date next meeting is the 17th of March. Thank you all very much for your